On May 11th, we lost a legend in cinema, Roger Corman. He was a pioneer in independent filmmaking. He was responsible for producing almost 500 movies. But he was also a director. So we are going to talk about the films directed by Roger Corman on this episode of Attack of the Killer Podcast.
Attention planet Earth and beyond. Stay tuned for Attack of the Killer Podcast. 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 That's time for the show. Yay.
What?
Hello and welcome to Attack of the Killer Podcast, the horror movie podcast that only reuses the same helicopter explosion footage every other episode. I am your host, Insane Mike, and this is episode 314, and we are going to be talking about the late, great Roger Corman. Roger Corman was a producer, director, writer, and even sometimes an actor. But we are going to focus on Roger Corman, the director. But first, if this is your first time listening to the show, let me explain to you the magic and wonder that is Attack of the Killer Podcast. We're a podcast. But not just any podcast. We are a horror movie podcast. We're a group of friends. We get together with a topic and we discuss films within that topic. We're all just friends, hanging out, chilling, drinking Zimas. But because we're just friends hanging out talking, we speak openly and freely, so there's probably going to be spoilers.
I'm actually going to make them silences longer when I edit this.
Oh, totally. Now, if you like our show, or even if you hate it, with every ounce of your being, you should help support us through... What? You should help support us through our Patreon. However, our Patreons aren't your mommy and daddy's Patreon. No siree. When you support Attack of the Killer Podcast, you become part of the Attack of the Killer Podcast family. And we call those people attackers. Now, as an attacker, you can get all kinds of perks, such as bonus episodes, early access to the regular episodes. You get your own membership card, sticker, and official certificate. You can get our YouTube shows, original artwork by me called Mikey's Monsters, and so much more. You will be the envy of all your friends and family. They will wish you would explode in a factory where they make cheese mix because they'll be so jealous. But what if you don't? What if they don't believe you? Well, to prove it, we're going to prove it to them right now, because as an attacker, you get shout-outs on the show, like our current attacker family right here.
Timothy Lenner, Roman Doppelfeld, Larry Watanabe, Brett J. Royer, Seth Key, Jessica Irish, Chris Cook, Brian Godsell, Stephen Sitter, Brandy Moore, Andrew Mahler, Rod Hutchinson, Carmen DeHague, Abraham Ariano, Andrew Bentler, Casey Kelderman, Tony Miller, Mike Clayton, Rose Talashoma, Abe Kirshner, Lisa Cavalier, Holly Berg, Bill Fisher, Emily Randolph, Greg Dedrick, and Randy Schwartzman.
You two can be on that list, and let's make that list longer so Brian will pass out.
I thought I could do it all in one breath, and I could not.
So just go to jointheattackers.com, and you too can be part of the AOTKP family. Pick the tier that best suits you and get more Attack of the Killer Podcast in your life. Again, that site is jointheattackers.com. And now it's time to introduce you to the podcast crew. He wanted to be Roger Corman's lighting guy. He knows Roger Corman doesn't pay very well. He did it mostly for the exposure. Brian.
Hello, everybody.
He never smoked a single cigarette during his days as DP for Roger Corman. Like most DPs, it would take forever to light it. Jason.
What's up, gang? Thanks for showing up.
I don't have a joke for this intro. We'll fix it in post. Tad.
I actually like your jokes this episode that they
good.
relate to. Yeah, they're actually pretty good. I'm not going to
Finally.
groan.
300.
Good job, Mike.
Thank you. It's about time I pay a writer.
Just took Roger Corman to die.
Definitely too soon. All right, so what you guys been watching? I don't know. Let's find out. Here's Ted with what we watched.
Well, we're sort of kicking off the summer blockbuster season. I'm curious to hear if Jason has seen the new Planet of the Apes. So I'm going to go with Jason. What have you watched?
Well, guys, guess what?
What?
Well, I went to the theater 2 days in a row this weekend.
What?
Weekend.
Damn.
I know. I mean, it helps. I got me one of them girlfriend things. And so, like, hey, let's go out and watch some movies. And so, last Friday, we went to Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes.
So he really wasn't watching the movies.
No comment. But what I did see, I can tell you, is fucking awesome.
Woo!
Any of you guys seen it yet?
No, I can't believe I haven't.
Yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, I just marathon the last three to get ready for this one, and I love them so much. And I won't spoil anything, but I mean, it just takes place later, so it takes a little adjusting to.
I've heard it has a slow beginning, but once it gets rolling.
Right. Yeah, it's just to get used to the not Caesar being around thing, and that sucks. But learning this new society of it's just, by the end you're like, Jesus, fuck, that was awesome and amazing, and it has everything you loved, and it just maybe took a second, but it was awesome. It was freaking awesome. And then the next night, I went to see Fathom Events. They do stuff all the time, weird, bringing stuff back, and it's the 40th year of Transformers.
So jealous.
And they did this really cool thing, and everyone I know I talked to about it's like, oh, the movie again? And I'm like, nope. And I just went to look at the poster again, and it doesn't, only in small words does it explain that it's not the movie. But what they did is they played the first 4 episodes of the cartoon, the 84 cartoon. And but the first episode, the very first episode of the cartoon that started everything, they got all the voice actors back together that are still with us, and which is a lot of them, Peter Cullen and everybody's there.
Scatman Crothers?
No, but they had another voice actor that did a great job, and Greg Berger was there, Frank Welker, Frank Todaro. There were tons. Dan Gilvezan was there to do Bumblebee's voice and kicked ass, and Michael Bell. Anyway, so they re-recorded all of the dialogue from the first episode 40 years later with most of the same actors, and they did it faithfully awesome. And so then on the screen, it was like a split screen showing the original episode on the left, and then on the right, they would show all of them sitting around the table doing the script read. They'd cut in on, one shots, close-ups for when the lines would be, so you could really see them doing the lines, but it was fucking awesome. It was just like, you're like, that's going to be weird, right? But it was so fucking cool. You've watched these cartoons for 40 years, and you know about voice actors. You see some, and you've seen more now than you ever have, thanks to everything. But just having that peek behind the curtain of seeing those guys actually saying the lines that I've been watching for 40 years was just incredible. And then after it was over, they had a bunch of bloopers and stuff, and you could just, they were like, just trying to make each other laugh. It was, and trying to fuck each other up in lines. Just seeing Frank Welker and Peter Cullen just give each other shit. It was so fucking cool, botching lines and just having fun and just goofing around, seeing them all in a room together again. And then the last episode 2, 3, and 4 were just normal, but I was still on the big screen, so it was pretty great.
That sounds awesome.
Yep, it really was.
Even more jealous now because I, like everyone else, thought they were just showing the movie again. I didn't realize that it was going to be that.
Yep.
But yeah, to see the voice actors
doing.
performing. Like that would be the thing that I would be
Oh.
most interested in seeing, really. So I
Absolutely.
hope that comes up, for, is available
Somewhere, yeah.
somehow, streaming or something. And maybe they'll put it on. Well, probably not Tubi, but
Yeah, if Hasbro
when you
can
first
make
said
money
that
on
it was the first 4 episodes of the show, but I thought you were going to say they edited back in all the hardcore inserts that they made when they sold the show to the European market.
Right.
But,
Nope, but it was
wow, fucking crickets! I thought that was funny. Fuck you guys.
It is funny. We're talking about
You see
Robots fucking.
You
Get
see,
it?
You see what it's like when I tell jokes?
yes. Now you firsthand
How it
experience.
feels?
But yeah, and then before the movie, they I loved it, but some people bitch about it because that's what people do on the internet. But they showed a lot of like commercials for just straight up commercials for the toys and all the things and what's coming out now and next. And it's like I'm in a theater, but it's like watching TV it was weird. But it was like, give me it all. I want to see all this stuff on the screen, and it was awesome. And got to bring Tiffany, and she'd never seen it before, so she had fun liking it. It was great. It was really, I left the theater just beaming. It was so cool. I can say, some people have kind of bootlegged it. I can probably send you a link so you can kind of see it, Brian. But yeah, it was awesome. And that's what I watched.
All right. Well, we know what he didn't watch. Brian, what did you watch?
I haven't got around to a whole lot of stuff. I was pretty busy last weekend since our schedule has been kind of goofy. I was up in Minneapolis last Saturday recording some narration for the upcoming Ed Versailles record, which is going to be fucking awesome. The music is amazing. But I did watch Cop Game, which is a dumb Bruno Mattei Vietnam action movie about a couple of MPs investigating murders during the Vietnam War. But it's it's a Bruno Mattei movie, so it's a complete piece of shit. I had some friends over last Friday. We watched Spooky Spooky, which is it's a Hong Kong horror comedy directed by Sammo Hung. It starts off as a Jaws knockoff, and then in the third act pivots into both Evil Dead and The Thing. It's
Whoa.
very weird, but it's really, really funny too. It's good stuff. And then after we got done recording up in Minneapolis, my buddy Andrew and I watched the first Rebirth of Mothra movie, which oddly enough I've never seen. There are 3 Mothra movies made in the 90s after the Heisei Godzilla series ended, and I've never seen any of them because they're very much made for kids. I mean, I know everyone thinks all kaiju movies are made for kids, but these were like straight up made for like 6-year-olds. So I really never gave them the time of day. But and although the story and the acting and the script and everything very, very kiddie, but there are some really, really kick-ass special effects sequences, like some of the best stuff that Koichi Kawakita did during the 90s. It's so worth checking out for that. We've been watching through Sopranos, Terry and I. She'd seen it, but it had been a long time, and I've never seen the show. Oh, shit. So I'm
I've
really
never seen
enjoying
either,
that.
yeah.
I'm really digging it so far. And then on Midnight Pulp, I've been watching both the original and the 1991 reboot of The Land of the Lost. So the original is a Sid and Marty Krofft show with a lot of stop motion stuff. And then the reboot from 91, which was never had, I don't think even on VHS, it's never had a home video release, if I'm not mistaken. But somehow Midnight Pulp got a hold of it, and it's streaming there. And that one was, all the effects are done by the Kyoto brothers.
Oh, no way.
So there's like really kick-ass puppets, monster suits, stop-motion dinosaurs, and a lot of the episodes were directed by John Carl Buechler. So it's got some horror background to it. Even though I would say the reboot is actually a little kiddier. Like the original show is super low budget, but it's really fucking weird.
Oh, yeah.
It's like trippy weird, like most Sid and Marty Krofft stuff, I guess, now that I think about it. But the reboot's still worth a watch. So.
And then you finished it off with the theatrical...
Fuck no.
Oh.
I will not watch that.
On.
It's bad.
No, I haven't seen it.
It's bad. It's bad, and I love Will Ferrell and Danny McBride. So
They couldn't
it's bad.
save it?
No.
But give me that fucking theme song all goddamn day.
Hells to the yeah.
Love it.
Is that everything you've watched, Brian?
Yeah.
All right. That leaves you, Mike. What have you watched?
It's my turn. So my goal is when we found out that Roger passed, that I was going to try to start checking off some movies from his filmography that I have not seen before. I haven't gotten very far. I mean, we'll watch.
I've only watched 200s, and I haven't gotten very far.
It's like a pebble in the Grand Canyon of his filmography if you watch 200. No, I watched one that's been sitting on my DVD shelf like forever because it's not really the type of film I'm into, but since it's a Corman film and I own it and it still was in plastic, I thought I'd better watch it. It's called I, Mobster from 1959. And so it's a 50s gangster film, so nothing that I really too care too much about, but Joe Santo, it's about this character Joe Santo and his rise and fall in the world of organized crime. And I had one of those like moments of where I kind of almost forgot what I was watching at first because I had watched a lot of over the past few months watched a lot of like I don't know what you would call that genre from back then. Those like propaganda films, like Reefer Madness or...
Yeah, I mean, I think propaganda films are, like, that's the genre.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's another name for it.
It just took me a while to
maybe,
remember propaganda. So it kind of felt like that in the beginning, only, way better made than most of those actual propaganda films. But, but once it starts getting going and I'm like, oh, yeah, this is a Roger Corman film. This isn't one of those trashy, propaganda movies, but still kind of has that same kind of tone and message going on through it. And it's okay. It was good. It's definitely wouldn't be something you would expect from that era of Corman. Of course, it's hard. That's hard to even say because he was always all over the place back in those early days with different genres. The weird thing is, and I don't remember the label that this was released on, but it felt like, I don't know if it was some bad camera work or if it was a pan and scan situation, but there are moments of very awkward camera movement that felt more like a computer did it than an actual
pan and scan.
But it wasn't like...
Those things were not shot for widescreen to begin with, so I doubt it was pan and scan, but it might have been like...
Right.
You said, was this on a DVD, you said?
Yeah, DVD.
Yeah,
So,
I've seen some stuff that, like, rips that were put on YouTube of movies that were like that were clearly not widescreen. Like, Unknown Island is one that just pops immediately to mind that has some really weird framing shit going on that shouldn't be going on.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just a technical gaffe when they mastered the DVD or something.
Well, maybe. But that was my first thought, too. It's like, these weren't shot for widescreen, so why is there, like, pan... And it also isn't, like, normal pan and scan movement where it's, like, left to right or right to left. There's like, weird camera panning up, camera panning down type of shots that was really disorienting. Otherwise, I thought it was a very well-done movie. And the only other thing I've had a chance to watch is, this has taken me 3 times to sit through this movie, but I've came up with a rule with my letterbox that I will not log a movie without watching it all the way through. Even if I hate it and I turn it off because I hate it, it's not going in my letterbox. So I feel obligated to finish the movie. Otherwise, I feel like just to log it in my letterbox, otherwise I feel like I've completely wasted my time. But that backfires because now I've tried to watch it 3 times and wasted even more of my time. But anyway, it's a film from 2010 called Yellow Brick Road, all one word. Oh, you guys heard of it? Seen it?
Nope. Thanks for taking the bullet.
Oh, big
Although,
time.
what kind of sociopath watches part of a movie and then logs it like, "Yep, I watched this"? No, you fucking didn't.
Right?
Exactly. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna watch the whole thing. But I don't want to. But I don't want to suffer through half a movie, feel like I've wasted my time because now I don't have anything to log in the letterbox. Letterbox is completely taking over my cinema watching. lifestyle. Anyway, but it's bad. I saw this movie pop up on a lot of different horror lists while researching movies for different episodes and ideas for episodes and whatnot. And I'm like, well, it keeps popping up, and people keep saying good things about it. And oh my god, it's boring as shit. So basically,
The biggest crime a movie.
it's like one of those. At first, I thought it had some promise because it's one of those that you would think it would be like a found footage film because years ago, back in the 40s or 50s or whatever, these people go on this expedition in this woods or whatever, and they never come back. And so nowadays, this film crew is going to go in there to document the happenings in this woods, and it kind of jumps in and out of regular narrative filmmaking styles into quasi found footage style. But it's not tense, it's not scary. Like everything that happens that is supposed to be tense and scary happens in broad daylight. And I mean, kudos for them trying to put the horror expectations on their ear, because also there's this weirdo thing where old-timey music is like loudly playing throughout the woods where no one knows where the music's coming from, and it just won't stop, and that's supposed to be creepy. But how can you get scared of hello my baby, hello my honey, hello my rectangle? It wasn't literally that song, but
Oh, good.
so again, it feels like they were trying to take your horror expectations, things that you normally would do, creepy music, dark settings, that's creepy, and then just totally flip it. And I've seen different genres and different movies that try to flip that stuff with music or whatever to, great success. But this is a complete, utter failure. It wasn't scary, it wasn't tense, it was not for me. Anyway, that's what I watched.
Wonder what Tad's watched.
I don't know. Oh, who cares?
Next segment.
Yeah. No, I rewatched the Fulci's Gates of Hell trilogy for the Screens from the Basement podcast.
Lucky.
They asked, if I wanted to come guest on the show, and I said absolutely, and they gave me. You guys, they have a great list of things coming up. I don't want to spoil anything, but I was like, I want this one. No, I want this one. I want this. How about you guys pick out of the 6 that I picked as far as topics? And they were like, would you want to do that? I'm like, absolutely. So anytime I have an excuse to rewatch The Beyond, give it to me.
Heck yeah.
And the other 2 were just bonuses on there. But that was a lot of fun. It's over on their socials. It's going to be on Spotify. It's everywhere. Just a great talk with those 2 dudes, and first time watches for Sam, which was great to
wow.
sit and hear someone gush about their first Fulci. It's like, oh, that's so awesome. And in doing that, I did a little extra credit because I actually prepare for other podcasts.
I was just about to fucking say it. Turd.
And because I was watching, I was going to be on their show. I had to represent us correctly, right?
Okay.
So
right.
people come over and listen to our show and then find out that I'm just a fucking hot mess over here. I watched Fulci for Fake. Has anyone seen it?
No.
I turned it on once, and it was like not what I was expecting, so I turned it off pretty
I've
quickly.
watched part of it, but I have not finished it either.
It's very strange. If you haven't seen it, it starts under a premise of this actor's hired to play Fulci in a movie, and to get to better understand him, he's going to go interview his, living friends and family. But there's not really a movie where a guy's playing Fulci, so it was like, why did you create this whole fake premise to just do interviews?
See, I hate that kind of we have a documentary, but we felt the need to make up this framing device. Fucking just talk to the people.
Right.
Yeah.
And they most of the movie is interviewing one of his daughters, who's had the most unfortunate life ever. Jesus.
Yeah.
She fell off a horse at a young age, so she was paralyzed, and she starts walking again and gets sick and mortal, almost kills her again. And so she's she's in bad shape, but she has some great stories.
Is she the one who tells the story about the day he bought the moped and he was all excited, went out riding and like stalled it at a street light or something? A bunch of kids made
Yeah.
fun of him.
Yeah, yeah, like a little scooter. You would remember who she was because she's like, I don't know how to even explain it, but it's clear like without her even knowing her story, she's gone through some shit. And she like chain smokes the whole episode. It's like, holy shit. But anyways, the other premise, the like little thing on the movie is like, this guy, he sort of narrates between the interviews, pretending like he's still pretending that he's doing this for like to better learn about Fulci. They treat him like he's the Italian Tommy Wiseau and no one knows anything about him, and then they talk to everybody who knew a lot about him, and it's like, that's not, I don't know, it's like he was some big mystery. It's like, not really. But they talked to Fabio Frizzi. He has some great stories. They talked to some of the actors who were in multiple movies. They all were sort of like, he was a professional. He could lose his cool, but he knew what he like. He was a very he was a great filmmaker at just like getting things knocked out. I mean, the Gates of Hell trilogy was knocked out in less than 2 years. He made those 3 movies in less than 2 years, which is just awesome. And at the end they talked to like his other daughter for very briefly, and they're like, we just realized he has another daughter. Let's go talk to her for 5 minutes. It's like you could have. It's almost like saying we did a poor job, and here's a quick interview with someone who actually could have had even better stories. I don't know. It could have been better, but I did learn a lot from. I didn't really know anything about his personal life, and hearing, just some of that. It was a bit sad when like his daughter was saying, he was known for this guy who was like making these gnarly, gory, what the fuck movies, and then after his heart attack, he needed like life-saving surgery. He was still making films, like waiting to get surgery, and he was like, she said he was like a scared little baby. He was just like, don't tell anyone I'm sick. I don't want people to worry about me, but I'm terrified. She said he was just, he's like convinced, this is it. I'm going to die. And, that started the process, but like down the line, it wasn't like he had this heart attack and died, or even he had the heart attack and they did the surgery and died. It was just, that was like the beginning of bad health for him. But just knowing like that, sort of like Corman, that he had like all these comedies and romance movies before he made these, which were like in the middle of his career, and then he made movies afterwards that aren't known, and he's not known for. He just had this like sweet spot in his career where he made these gnarly classic horror movies that people latched onto as like a little flash in a pan, and he made these things, and for some reason they resonate with so many of us. And yeah, sort of just an interesting guy and an interesting story. I just wish it wasn't told in the way it was. It just didn't need it.
There's one that I haven't seen that I really want to see called Beatrice Cenci, that he always considered the best movie he ever made. And it's like a very anti-church, pro-feminist kind of a thing, if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, I'd like to check that one out at some point. I don't know if it's got a release over here or not. I might have to dig up. Good thing I have a region-free Blu-ray player, I guess. But
yeah, there's another documentary, I think, like Talking Fulci or Talking with Fulci or something, that recently came out, and I think it came out in like 21 or something. But I did find a copy on YouTube, but I think it's like they don't have English subtitles, and it's not in English, so it's like there's no way for me to understand what any of it unless I learn another language. So yeah, I mean, I still recommend watching it just to learn more about the guy. There's some really great stories from everybody about on-set stories and things that happened, and it is kind of sad and tragic, but it was a nice sort of cap to watching those 3 movies and watching that. And other than that, I haven't made it to the theater. I want to, but just haven't had the time, so that's what I watch.
All right, thanks, Tad. It's time to get into some Roger Corman films, though. And Brian, what's going to be the first movie we watch tonight?
Oh, the first one is the 1963 classic X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes.
August 14th. Notes on experiment designated X. Experimental subject, myself, James Xavier.
X, the most fantastic experiment you have ever taken part in, presents Ray Milland in his most challenging role since his Academy Award-winning Lost Weekend. X, the man with the X-ray eyes.
Are you all right? It's like a splitting of the world. More light than I've ever seen. Filled with light.
X, the man with the X-ray eyes, tries to help the most desperate in our society and enjoys all the delights of secretly studying sexology.
Headache?
No, it's just my eyes.
A doctor with the power to see what others cannot believe. He can overcome the unknown, save lives, and invade the glamour gambling casinos of Las Vegas and defy the goddess of chance.
Don't draw. Don't draw. Next card's a face card.
Harry, you better go for the sheriff right now.
Push up your sleeve. No!
Oh, okay, that cut off very abruptly.
Like the movie.
Yeah. So Dr. Xavier, not that Dr. Xavier, yeah, is an ophthalmologist who develops a drug that allows someone to, once they've squirted it into their eyes, like that horrible thing that eye doctors use to dilate your eyes. If everyone here who wears glasses has probably been through that torment more than once. But they can see through things. It gives you X-ray vision, like those glasses you used to be able to order out of the back of comic books.
Totally worked.
Yeah, and so he's too impatient to deal with the whole trials and FDA approval and all that, so he just decides, fuck it, I'm going to squirt this shit in my own eyes. And things go about as well as you might imagine they would go in a sci-fi horror movie for someone who's squirting an unregulated chemical into their eyes that allows them to see to the center of the universe. So this is my favorite of the movies that Corman directed.
Whoa, really? Favorite?
Yeah. I absolutely fucking love this movie. I remember, so back when I was a kid, I got a VHS of Reptilicus, the silly Danish kaiju movie. And it was, I think AIP must have been the American distributor for Reptilicus, because all the trailers at the beginning of the tape were for other AIP movies, mostly Corman movies. And there was a trailer for Panic in the Year Zero, which Ray Milland was also in and directed. And there was a trailer for X, The Man with the X-Ray Eyes. And of course, the trailer just makes it seem like this silly, like they really play up that one scene where he's at the dance party and can see through all the women's clothes, which is like 2 minutes of the movie. And then it gets very, very dark from there. But so this movie is very... The term Lovecraftian gets thrown around way too much, I think. And so I hate to say a thing is Lovecraftian, but this very much is. It's man playing with things that he shouldn't be playing with, and eventually being able to see that the universe is so big that we don't matter, and things far beyond our power have their eyes on us and don't regard us very highly. Which leads to the scene at the end where he's at the tent revival, at the point where I'm gonna go back a little bit. He's experimenting on himself with these eye drops. He gets too carried away. One of his colleagues tries to stop him, tries to help him, and he accidentally shoves the guy out a window, and he falls like 10 stories and dies. And so to flee the murder rap, he winds up working at a carnival sideshow as a mentalist. Give me your watch and I'll tell you something about you. Except he's using his power to see through people's pockets into their wallets, reading their driver's licenses, so on and so forth, and using that information. Eventually, the Barker, who runs his sideshow act,
Don Rickles.
Yes,
Fuck yeah.
the almighty Don Rickles,
Yeah.
gets wise to the idea that this power is for real and starts exploiting him. To escape that, he runs off to Vegas to try to beat the house so he can get some money to try to reverse what's happening to him. But he winds up fleeing the casino because they bust him for cheating. He runs out into the desert, and all this time his eyes are getting more and more powerful. There's this really cool scenes where he's driving through the strip and he's seeing the girders inside the buildings and stuff, which Corman in his autobiography said that the way they did that was he found a building that was being built while they were shooting the movie and just went out and photographed it in various stages of completion and then overlaid the film later. But so he runs out, finds this tent revival where this preacher is shouting fire and brimstone and hallelujah, and he says that he can see to the eye in the center of the universe. And the preacher says, well, if your eyes offend you, pluck them out. And he fucking rips his eyes out. And of course it's not, this is 1963, made for a couple $100,000. You don't see him tear his eyes out, but
It's the
I thought what
most.
they showed was gruesome. Still.
Yeah,
It
that
is.
final
It's-
shot with the red,
it's
the red
great.
holes.
But I just love that it starts out as just, this is just going to be a mad science movie, and then it ends on cosmic horror. It just keeps escalating. And in the original script, there's a scene towards the beginning of the movie where Xavier and Diane, his assistant slash maybe kind of at one point love interest, but not really, are sitting out on a patio, and he's discussing his work. But in the original script, that scene went on longer, and there's this great line of dialogue where he says, we're frail, we bend and snap like reeds. The weight of the universe and the stars push down on us. I want to rip the mask away from the universe. All the demons who hide behind the blackness of space, if they have faces, then I am going to look upon them. And that really foreshadows that Lovecraft cosmic horror ending. And there was some other stuff too that was cut out to make Xavier sound less insane up front. But I kind of wish they would have kept it, because it makes the whole thing just seem more heightened and melodramatic. And Xavier's eyes were supposed to glow when he used his power too, but the effect was too expensive. And when he's doing his mentalist act, there are a couple of punters played by John Hayes and Dick Miller, who were hired as a duo because of how well they performed together in Little Shop of Horrors.
Yep.
And they were hired specifically. Corman told them, heckle Don Rickles, because Corman hired Rickles because of his nightclub act. He was already a popular insult comic even at this point. But Rickles got really pissed off about this because they were ad-libbing their heckling to him. And he was trying, okay, this is my big shot. He'd been in one other movie before this, but the role wasn't nearly as big. So this was kind of like, my big break, my screen, not debut, but, my chance to make something. So he was trying to be a real professional actor, go off the script, show up, know the lines, hit the marks. And then here's these two fucking chuckleheads yucking it up with him in the audience while then screwing up his line deliveries. There's a scene also before he runs away from Rickles. He calls himself Mr. Mentallo while he's doing a sideshow act, and there's a couple of scenes in his dressing room, and there's these weird, like the windowsill and the little insets in the door and around the door frame are all dripping red paint. Did you guys notice that? It's kind of like this grayish purple main color, but then there's these little highlights of red, and it's all running down the walls. And that was supposedly due to just sloppy work and a short shooting schedule. But the production designer on this movie, as with most of Corman's movies from this period, was Daniel Haller. And I refuse to believe that dude did that shoddy of a job. Because all of the Gothic Poe stuff, that's all Haller's design. He later directed the Dunwich Horror and Die Monster Die for AIP. I mean, the dude had an eye, and he knew how to make a great set. So you look at fucking The Pit and the Pendulum, and you tell me you think that guy's going to do a shitty job with paint running down the walls. I think that was on purpose because it looked neat. And it just gave a little bit of visual spice. One last little fun thing, John Hoyt, who plays this doctor at the beginning of the movie when Xavier is just starting to get his powers, and he's working in this hospital, and he looks into this little girl who's due for surgery, and he realizes that she's been misdiagnosed. So he asks to be in on the surgery to try to stop this doctor from killing her, basically, because he's going to cut her open and, like, I don't know, take a lung out or something that is a perfectly healthy thing. So at the last minute before this doctor's going to make the cut, he reaches over and slices his hand open with a scalpel. It's like, oh, shit, you're bleeding. Sorry, you can't do surgery. Douchebag. And then
meanwhile, probably bleeding all over the patient who's already got an open cut on them.
Right. So that doctor is played by an actor named John Hoyt, who at age 80 appeared in a nude calendar featuring older character actors, which he plugged in Fangoria issue number 51.
Oh, I gotta see if I have that issue.
Weird little bit of thing. Anyway, so yeah, what did you guys think of X?
I loved it. This is the first time watch for me. I thought I had seen it. I love this, like the 60s. Like, I love the scene where he's at the party, and like I love the 60s-ness of like, we can't show any nudity, so like let's look at the guy's hairy legs and the girl's backs. How racy. I love how his eyes get like creepier and creepier through the movie. Like when
the parts where they're blacked out with the gold irises. Oh, God.
Those are my favorite.
In the casino, when they rip off his glasses and expose his eyes, it's jarring, and
it just makes you cringe because how painful those contact lenses must have been. I mean,
scleral
contact lenses aren't good now. So in 1963, on a movie this cheap, that's amazing he didn't go blind from wearing those fucking things.
Yeah, they're not healthy by any stretch of the imagination, and his eyes are always watering when you see them. When he's got those contacts in, which really adds to the effect of everything, but you know that's real. His eyes are really in pain with them freaking contacts in.
It sort of like gave me a vibe of like, obviously story, Invisible Man, but like the feeling and vibe of it sort of had like a Sean Connery 007, if that makes any sense. Like the look and feel of it, like, I don't know. Something about it reminded me of an old Bond movie, but this is just well acted, is well written. Like I enjoyed this. It was entertaining for me from front to back. This is my favorite of the three that we watched. I love seeing Don Rickles in the credits, opening credits. So I'm like, fuck yeah, he's gonna be somewhere in this movie, and he's playing Don Rickles. That's great. But he does have some more range. He's not just being himself. He has some serious lines and. A little bit of gets tense there when he's on the run, and this was just really cool. I mean, I really enjoyed everything about it.
I don't want to go last.
Go ahead then.
Well, hey, speaking of them opening credits, 60 seconds of a picture of an eyeball. to open the movie. It's not footage
You got to
of an
stretch
eyeball.
it out to feature length somehow.
It's 60 seconds of a picture of an eyeball.
Yeah, it's cool.
And
Well,
my next...
I was gonna say I can spoil one of
I
my
didn't
trivia
think so.
things. The film originally had a 5-minute prologue about the human senses. This prologue was removed from all post-theatrical prints of the film and may have been removed from some of the theatrical release prints. This reduced the running time to 79 minutes, but the footage can be found on the second sight Blu-ray. Go ahead, Jason.
It's not for me. I just thought it was an experimental
didn't you
film.
like about this?
I didn't like it at all. I thought it was an experimental film. It was boring, and I didn't like any of his vision. I didn't enjoy that. I'm like, how can he drive if he can't see? How's he driving down the road? Yeah.
Very poorly. That's why his car crashes.
Yeah, like 17 minutes later, that car. Anyway, I didn't like it.
Did you catch it when his car crashed? It was a whole different car.
Oh,
Because
yeah.
it's a Roger Corman movie.
Definitely.
It's like
there's no way we see it happen.
It was a beautiful Lincoln Continental driving with white wall tires, and when it's wrecked, it's like a junker that was spray painted blue.
Yep,
No hubcaps, no more white walls. It's like, man, his car changed when it flipped. I love it.
And it did all that flipping and landed just 10 feet from the road, and all that. Yeah, no, it was, not for me.
I like this movie. It's not my first time watch. I actually used to have this on VHS back in the day, so probably the same label, and probably had Reptilicus trailer on the beginning for all I can remember. I think I only ever really watched it once before though, so it's had been forever. I'll be honest with you, I never was much of a Ray Milland fan, but here's why. The first film I saw when I was aware of who Ray Milland was The Thing with Two Heads, and his character is so freaking awful that it kind of tainted the actor for me for quite a long time.
But that's just a testament to how good an actor he is.
I know, but oh my goodness. But yeah, everything you guys said, other than Jason, I really agree with. I think it's definitely one of the
Everything I don't like about this movie is because of the directing. That's what you're going to hear me say that from all three tonight. But
You didn't think this one was?
I don't think he's a good director. Is what I'm trying.
You don't
to
think?
say.
I mean, this one wasn't even fun for you. Like, this was a blast.
I think I love the story. I mean, the concept of the story I think is awesome and great, and I like the little things. I mean, like you said, those gold irisy, that's fucking freaky. And
or when his eyes are plucked out, all
the
that
ending was
gnarly.
fucking badass. It was like, Jesus Christ, what? Oh, it's over. Oh God, it was like awesome. Like, you're just
And
gonna
that's
leave me like that.
Such an effective but cheap effect, because that when you see his eyes plucked out, that's just like a still photo that they
Yeah. Oh no.
cut the eyes out with scissors. Put like a meat colored thing behind it.
But it's an hour and 20 minutes. So in my head, an hour of that was just experimental footage of shooting colors and lights, and I just
all the POV shots?
all the POV stuff. It was like, come on, it just But the good stuff is good. I like I said, I love the idea and the story behind it.
Yeah, the concept for everything. I mean, it's really cool because it's definitely far more. You go into this movie thinking, oh, okay, what kind of horror movie is this? The guy has X-ray vision, but it definitely has. His vision just keeps going beyond and beyond and beyond. I just want to know who stole from who, because Uncanny X-Men #1 came out the same month and same year as this movie. X, the man with X-ray eyes. His name is Dr. James Xavier, and the leader of the X-Men is Dr. Charles Xavier.
This came first because Marvel rips everything
That's
off.
what I'm saying.
That's
what I'm saying.
That might have been the impetus behind changing the title, though, because this and even when you see the title card, this movie and scripting and everything, this movie was just called X. The man with the X-ray eyes part was added later.
Yeah,
Like on the theatrical posters and stuff. So I wonder if that was a pivot to, let's add some more words and maybe make people think this is a X-Men
the very
thing.
first Marvel movie.
Yes.
And then later on, Corman would make the Fantastic Four. So
Yeah,
you know.
it's,
Well, then
Cyclops
he sort
origin
of made
story.
Doctor Strange and the Raven. So
Well, Doctor Strange was. Oh, I see. I thought you were talking about Dr. Mordred there for a minute. It's like, that was Charles Band. You're getting your cheap-ass directors mixed up.
For being such a smart doctor dude, he sure is dumb when he's in Vegas. First of all, I've never seen any movie where somebody is able to scam Vegas but not do it smart.
right,
Where
yeah,
he's
he's
just
like
out loud like, don't draw. The next card is a face card.
Yeah.
And they're like,
Blatant.
I'll
all the
show you how I
security.
do it. You know, saying shit like that loudly in front of the freaking thugs and
What did you
everything.
expect?
The security. But not just that too. It's like if I figured out a way of tricking Vegas, I would, and I was had that kind of superpower where I know I'm not going to lose. You would lose a few hands, right? Wouldn't you lose a few hands to throw them off your trail? You know, but no, he didn't care. Just go all
he's
in.
like fuck it, throw it to the wind, and
Yep.
yeah.
That really paid off for him. And I will say, though, even though not a big Ray Milland fan, I'm coming around because I realize he is a super stud by picking up that Bunsen burner with the 4-foot flame and lighting a cigarette with it. That was some machismo right there, man.
Milan's great. Come on, frogs. That's good shit.
And that
Mike's
was
got history
that
with
was probably the second movie I ever realized, and he's a jerk in that too.
I think he made his career playing jerks. Like,
Yeah.
Well, okay, that's not true. The Uninvited, the ghost movie he made in the 40s, that he's not a jerk in that. That's really good. I really want to see A Lost Weekend, the one he won the Oscar for.
I know.
I love watching movies like this or like Frogs with an actor who was on their way out but was huge like 20 years before that. And all I can think, and by all accounts, everyone said that he wasn't bitter at all. Like all the on-set stories people talk about, that he was really very professional. Of course, you know, an old school Hollywood star is gonna be that way, but that he was very nice to everyone, that he wasn't like mean or standoffish or never had an attitude that he was better than what he was doing. Like he made a fucking fortune in the movies he was in the 40s. So by the time this came up, like he'd show up, do his lines, talk to the cast and crew a little bit, and then get in a fucking Rolls Royce and fuck off to play golf. Like he didn't have anything to be bitter about. He was fine with this. It was just work.
I do want to pay tribute to Andy right now and share with you guys my favorite lines from this movie. So it's the scene where Dr. X is trying to convince his colleague to help him with his experiments. We're towards the beginning. And he says, "Oh, Sam, I need you." And Sam replies, "When do you want to do it?"
Yeah. Didn't Andy have a big fucking poster of this too? Doesn't he? The big poster of it?
Probably.
Might have.
Oh man.
Yeah, it was still sensory
I'll look through
overload
that.
going through his house.
Need to pick up one sheet. I do have the novelization for this, but I haven't read it yet.
Oh, cool. One last note. You know, this movie gets me because I'm a sucker for films that take place in carnivals and for films that take place in Vegas, and this has both. You know, and I love how it's got some great stock footage of the carnival stuff, people riding rides, or the woman that falls and breaks her leg, and he uses his superpowers again to see that she's broken her leg and broken some ribs. Anyway, yeah, thumbs up for me too. But Tad, what trivia do you have for X, the man with X-ray X's?
I gave away a few, but I have a few more. Tim Burton actually developed a script for a remake of this with Brian Goluboff, but it was unproduced. So
With who?
writer Brian Goluboff. I don't know
Sure.
who that is. The final chase scene with Ray's erratic driving took place on Soledad Canyon Road between the city of Santa Clarita and Acton in California, the same place where the entire film Duel was filmed.
Anytime I watch a Roger Corman film, directed or produced, whatever, and there's like a crazy car chase or whatever going on, I always watch the sides of the roads to tell if the footage is sped up, because you see like the little plants and stuff going like a million miles an hour. If this was sped up, I couldn't tell because there was nothing on the sides of the road, so they did a good job with this one.
There were a couple of parts where he used that old standby favorite technique of his, skip framing, but I think
frames.
That's all. Roger couldn't afford to do a real high-speed car chase. Come on.
No, of course not. And
so every one of them is skip framed.
And the way that car is all over the road on some of those thin-ass roads where there's just a cliff on the other side, that would have been pretty ballsy for a no-budget film to let the driver drive like that.
Right.
So it had to have been like sped up, or I didn't even think about cutting out frames.
Now that I think about it, a lot of the old Bond movies used that technique too in car chases, so maybe that's why you were. You're saying this made you think of like old Connery Bond movies.
Yeah. Sorry, Tad, I interrupted.
No, that was all my trivia because I had mentioned the prologue and the car, being different once it flipped. So.
Yeah. All right, cool. Well, let's move on then. Tad, what is our next film?
Our next film is Creature from the Haunted Sea.
How much Jack you think's in that strong rock?
There's plenty of Cuban sugar, though.
Here's what happened. The general beat his friend Castro to the Cuban treasury. The strongbox is now on this boat. So are a deported American gangster and his moll. And lurking in the depths is the creature from the haunted sea.
You're a crazy, mixed-up kid.
I am perfectly adjusted to my life of crime.
Don't worry, Mary Bell. I'll save you.
It's all right. Be calm, everybody. The boat's insured.
Beware. The creature from the haunted sea.
Well, the trailer sort of explained it, but a crook decides to bump off members of his inept crew and blame their deaths on the legendary sea creature. What he doesn't know is that the sea creature is real and really rubber. This one, it's amazing to think it was made like in 61 and we're talking about The Raven in 63. It's like, it feels like it's 10 years difference between, because this feels so much older and so much like cheaper, and even X was made in 63 as well. Like 2-year difference is crazy because this does not. This feels like practice. It's not bad. It has some real good humor. I appreciate the humor in it, and the creatures. I don't know if is the creature supposed to be funny?
Is this movie supposed to be funny?
I would think so, that the creature's supposed to be funny, because this film goes right into that set of films that he did kind of all around that time that were like the black and white, super duper cheap, super quick films like Little Shop of Horrors and Bucket of Blood that really leaned more into the outrageous comedy.
A lot of that was was Charles Griffith, the screenwriter's doing. Corman never felt like he wanted to do comedy because he thought it was too difficult and didn't have time or money to dick around and experiment and try to get the formula right. But Griffith was just like, no, it's fine. I'll just write a goofy script and you do your thing. But yeah, I'm pretty sure the monster looks ridiculous on purpose because the movie's supposed to be funny, which is something that annoys me because that monster always shows up when people are talking about B movies and like stupid, cheap shit, and they'll use this as an example. It's like, yeah, but it looks like that on purpose.
Yeah.
Couldn't you find a dumb-looking monster that was just bad because it was bad?
Right. Yeah. It's just like a low-hanging fruit. It's like easy to use this one, but I did like I said, I like some of the humor. It was like Corman doing Gilligan's Island, and we had like every stereotype and the weird narration over the top. It's best. I think what I liked about it best was that it was like only an hour long. It's just this one didn't entertain me as well. It's still fun. I didn't hate it by any means. It's just not my favorite Corman directed movie. I don't want to say too many mean things, so someone else go.
Well, it's not me then. Okay.
I have a lot of cool trivia on this one.
It felt like even at an hour that was a bit too much.
Yeah.
Because it's. So you remember that Family Guy episode where Peter like hurts his knee and just goes for like 10 minutes.
Way too long. Yeah.
And it's one of those things like you laugh and then you get annoyed and then you're like Stockholm syndromed into coming around and laughing at it again. That's like the thing with Beach Dickerson making animal noises because he's brain damaged. It's like it's funny for 5 minutes and then it's annoying for 45 minutes and then it's kind of funny again for about 5 minutes at the end. Yeah, this, I don't know. It's fine. It's good background noise, I guess. It's my least favorite of the evening for sure. This is the third time Corman made this script. It started out as some straight up crime caper movie called Naked Paradise. It was readapted when he made Beast from Haunted Cave, which at this point I am intimately familiar with, having done the novelization. Because Corman told Charles Griffith, hey, give me Naked Paradise, but put a monster in it and snow. And so this was actually made. So Corman found out about some tax subsidy stuff about making movies in Puerto Rico. So he was like, cool, let's go make movies there. And like he always did with the film group stuff, it was him and his brother Gene. Each one would direct a movie they'd both produce, and they made movies in pairs. Well, they did Last Woman on Earth was one. I forget what the initial movie was of the setup, but they somehow found themselves with enough time and barely enough money to make one more movie while they were in Puerto Rico. So he called up Charles Griffith and said, hey, give me a quick script. So Griffith rewrote the Naked Paradise / Beast from Haunted Cave script again, but as a comedy this time. And that's how we wound up with this.
Oh, you want to go?
For me, it's all about this thing you guys keep saying's in this movie, comedy.
In air quotes.
Yes, I definitely did that. Yeah, it's like the opening of the film's kind of like serious, and then it just gets brought in subtly, and it's really confusing whether it's a comedy or not.
Yeah, the tone is all over.
The tone is awful and not good. And so, like, the Stockholm part, I just never came out of it. Like, it was just never funny to me at all, and it just made me mad because of the poor tone usage, and the fucking animal noise, dude, was the stupidest fucking thing I've ever heard in my life, and it just never was funny, ever, and so I didn't like this movie. Sorry, guys. And I blame it all on Roger Corman and bad directing, so sorry.
I like this
I would
movie.
blame it more on the writing of this one, but...
Well, sure, but it always falls on the director at the end of the day.
I like this movie. It's
see.
from that era of the black and white cheapies that he was doing, like I mentioned before. Little Shop of Horrors, Bucket of Blood. This was a first time watch for me, so it was definitely one that I was missing. I like in all of those films how the you got these over the top characters with the weirdest of traits. Whether it be Dick Miller eating flowers in Little Shop of Horrors, or the hypochondriac mother in Little Shop of Horrors, or in this one, the guy who makes animal noises. I mean, I agree,
Oh, God.
it got old at a certain point, but here's what I think this movie misses the mark versus the other ones, and that is Jonathan Hayes, Mel Wells, and Dick Miller are not in this movie. Was not a fan of the cast in this. They did not do the material proper, where if it was like those guys and maybe some others from Corman's troupe, it probably would have been a lot funnier and a lot better, with the exact same jokes. For me, the stuff on the boat, I had a lot of fun with. It's when they get to the island that it really, really drags for me, because now you're getting into this other subplot of the two guys, falling in love with the natives of the island and everything. So, but I still laughed, the first couple times at the animal noises. Or, God, one of my favorite.
I don't think none of it's funny.
Yeah.
It just goes on a little too long is all.
Oh, I think one of my favorite jokes right there at the beginning, where they're, the captain, is before they get on the boat, and they're talking to the one guy about getting these rebels out of the country, and the teenage guy says something, and then the captain tells him to shut up. And they continue the conversation, and the teenage guy says something again, and the captain tells him to shut up again. And then the third time, the rule of thirds in comedy, the third time he says something stupid, and it's the general guy that tells him to shut up. And I thought that was funny. So yeah, I like this movie. It's definitely not as good as some of those others of the black and white era. And again, I mostly blame the choice in actors in it. So,
and again, the choice wasn't really much of a choice, because they only had so many people down in Puerto Rico with them.
Sure. Yeah.
Thinking of the script and the really absurdist humor, like some of the goofy shit in the narration, or Beach Dickerson's animal noises, seems like
Beach Dickerson. Sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
That's his name. It's not my fault.
It's his mom's.
That this is like, people point to things like Airplane and The Naked Gun as like, this is a watershed in comedy. These are the great classics. Stuff like this, though, is kind of the dry run for that. It's the same type of humor. It's maybe not taken to the same extent, because it was the early days and they were just sort of starting to experiment at this kind of absurdist comedy. But I kind of have a feeling that the Abrams Zucker maybe saw this kind of stuff and was like, oh, that's good, but we can build on that and do it better. Now, I'm not going to say like specifically Creature from the Haunted Sea influenced Airplane, but you see what I mean about it's the same type of humor in its sort of embryonic stage.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, comedy was not done in this way. And I know what you guys are saying as far as the tone goes, but I think to me that's kind of the appeal, that the tone is off, because I mean, Bucket of Blood and Little Shop of Horrors is the same thing. I remember watching the original Little Shop of Horrors when I was younger, and finding some of those later scenes utterly creepy. It's just really dark imagery and stuff, and yet you have these like weirdo goofball characters that are just, you got a freaking Dragnet parody going on in that movie. and it's funny, but it's also just weird. And Bucket of Blood's the same thing. There's a lot of dark moments in that movie, but it's got that same style of comedy.
Which apparently I do not like.
Apparently.
So that's okay, though.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I do also want to say I like the music in this, Fred Katz's music. Fred Katz, basically, I would assume the Harry Manfredini of Roger Corman world, because this is the exact same score from Little Shop of Horrors, like beat for beat. It's the entire score for Little Shop of Horrors is in this. So, and I love that. I love the music in that. So that also got me, and I love the little cartoon opening, which the art was done by Mad Magazine's Sergio Aragonis, and I love him, so I was into that. So I like this movie. So there.
Yeah, I guess you told me.
Told all y'all. I'm just kidding. Tad, what trivia do you have for this one?
Not much after you and Brian. Let's see.
Usually, right? Gosh.
The scene of the Cuban officer saluting as the little boat they're floating on sinks was not planned. It actually began sinking as they were completing the shot. Roger Corman told the actors to stand and salute as the boat sank and filmed every moment, later stating that it wasn't very deep there. He also gave high praise for the Mexican actors who played the officers for taking direction so well. So that's sort of funny. And then a little bit about the monster. It was made for $150, which was a lot back then. The head was made of 5 helmets from a previous Roger Corman picture. The body was made from a wetsuit, moss, and Brillo pads. The eyes were tennis balls of ping pong. The eyes were tennis balls of ping pong ball pupils, and the claws were pipe cleaners. Finally, the monster was covered in black oilcloth to make him slimy.
And worth it. All right. So moving on, Jason, what's our next film?
Our next film is called, well, it's from 1963. It's called The Raven.
True terror is the soft, cold caress of the raven's wing.
Ooh. Your hands are so cold.
A woman whose desires transcend reality. The mysterious powers of black magic. These you will explore.
Now, what is it you need? You got some dried blood or from bat in the house?
The Raven will take you careening through the darkest of dangers, into the ominous mystery of a master magician's evil castle.
Afraid, my dear? I offer you a choice. The secret of your hand manipulations, or this against this.
Well, don't just stand there. Do something.
This is no answer.
Very well, then. Adieu to the death.
Cool, they all say it at the same time at the end there in the film for the magician Erasmus Craven, played by Vincent Price, is still deeply depressed 2 years after the death of his beloved wife, Lenore, played by Hazel Court. One day he's visited by Adolphus Bedloe, played by Peter Lorre, who has been transformed into a raven after losing a duel to Dr. Scarabus, played by Boris Karloff, an evil wizard. After Craven transforms Bedloe back into a human, Bedloe claims to have seen Lenore's ghost at Scarabus's castle, prompting the two to head to Scarabus's castle to seek Craven's lost love. That's right. The Raven, 1963. Yeah. Yep. What'd you guys think?
Uh-oh. That was a quick pivot.
Fine. Let me. So can we agree that like things can be mutually exclusive? So like
elaborate.
Yeah.
This just cements that I don't like Roger Corman's movies. And I'm sorry
but
you
you
have
like
to hear.
Mask of Red Death.
It's fine, but it's not.
Oh, okay.
It's not.
I
Let's
thought you
check
liked
my
it
rating.
better.
Well, 1 out of 500 does not mean I like this guy's movies. I think it means the opposite.
How many of the other Poe movies have you seen?
Oh, quite a bit of them, and they're fine. They're not for me. But it also means that I still respect him as the king of the bees, the Pope of pop cinema, the spiritual godfather of New Hollywood, the king of cult. I understand you
Googled him, didn't you?
Well, there was a fun list, and I wanted to get it in there, but it doesn't mean that I don't love him and respect him for what he's done for cinema. It's fucking huge, and it'll never be the same, and couldn't be the same without him. It'll never be like him again. I love him.
You probably
for what he's done.
Appreciate him more as a producer than a director.
Well, we'll see next episode. Oops, spoiler.
Oh, spoilers.
We'll see. We'll see what they picked for me to watch. But I'm
gonna find the word.
So sorry, that I probably lost my horror club card, but I just and I know it's not a nice thing to say after the dude just died. But sorry, man. I don't think I like your movies, and that's okay. I hope, but yeah,
that's fine. We don't have to be friends.
I know. I'll send you a picture of a Transformer later, and we'll make up. But so yeah, it's cool to see all the horror icons in this. Even though I thought Peter Lorre was horrible in this, and
wow.
I mean, it's performance. I thought he was just drunk the whole time, and he didn't.
It might have been.
And I didn't.
But Price and Karloff?
Price was Price. He's fucking untouchable, right?
Yeah, okay, good.
But Karloff, I didn't like his acting in this. I thought he was just slow. Well, and I didn't like Nicholson at all in this. I thought he was just. Well, you just watch how it's shot and filmed. It's like half the movie he's just like, what's that over there?
I'm sorry. Anytime I see babyface Nicholson, I think it's adorable.
Well, I'm not saying it's not adorable. I'm saying I don't think he's a good actor in this. Two different things, guys. But it's fine. It's fine. You know, the sets and the year and price, sure, but no, I didn't like it. Sorry.
To be fair, Karloff was practically dead at this point.
Well, yeah, I mean,
he had a few more years left in him, but
and he was fine. It was just
of the two movies he was in called The Raven, this is second best.
Well, yes. So sorry to poop on your parade.
Oh, it's fine.
Get it out of the way. I know I can be wrong. It's fine.
I mean, it's probably the most un-Poe of all of Corman's Poe films.
Oh yeah, they ran with it on this one.
But,
which is cool. I like it for that.
But yeah, I do too.
Because it's like, what the fuck did you smoke before you wrote
I
this?
would argue that is, it could be this or it could be Haunted Palace.
Yeah,
because
maybe.
that's just straight up a Lovecraft story. At least they have made an effort to put the Raven in.
Are you giving it credit just because it has the bird and then the line at the very, 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 very end?
Right, yeah.
But besides all that, though, I think it might be my favorite. I will say, though, it's total nostalgia.
Favorite of the night or favorite of the Poe movies or what?
Favorite of the night might be tough. I don't know if I can pinpoint which one would be my... But it's probably my favorite. I'm saying it's my favorite of the Poe films.
Yeah.
But it's
Damn.
It's nostalgia for me because
Oh,
one of my
sure.
earliest memories of watching movies ever was watching this with my mother when it played on PBS
Aw.
way back in the 70s. I mean, I had to have been
1963.
It had to have been what? No.
Nothing. Okay, good.
Anyway, it had to have been because I think it was even before I was in kindergarten. So,
This
and
might
the
have
fact
been,
that I
is
can
this from
remember
back
anything
when we
like
were
that.
talking about Mask of the Red Death a few episodes back, where they had all those price introductions that were done specifically for Iowa Public Television.
Well, I thought maybe it was that, but I looked up, and that wasn't until like I think '82, and I would have been 10. So, yeah, funny.
Year I was born, but fine.
Whatever. I love this movie. I'm done. No, I just remember being a little kid, nuzzled up in my mother's bosom, and just in awe and on the edge of my seat at the epic Warlock battle.
Are you fucking kidding me? I fell asleep 17 times. They're just pointing fingers at each other for like 20 fucking minutes.
Granted, as an adult, I realize now
God.
that it's just two aging actors waving their fingers at each other.
It was
with
their favorite scene to film, I'm sure.
Yeah, they're both
They get to
sitting
sit
down
and just do nothing.
with
Make faces.
badly drawn blue and red circles floating across the screen. My favorite is when Karloff brings the statues to life, and to represent that, it's just animal noises with camera push-ins and camera tilts on statues. I think
Poor
it's,
filmmaking.
I think it's clever with nothing to work with, and you're trying to pull that off. It's theater of the mind at that point.
Oh.
So yeah, on the tech side, it definitely none of that holds up, but it still brings back the nostalgia for me watching that scene. So I think I always have a lot of fun watching this movie, and I think it's got some great comedy in it as well.
I'm so torn on this one in particular because I can recognize. I mean, it's hard to hate anything Price,
Yep.
and it's cool to see young Jack Nicholson and Boris Karloff, and I thought some of the comedy was comedy, but it's well made. It's like, to me, it's like clearly like a well made movie, but Poe era stuff. The cat, it's just not for me. I find I'm so bored with it. I'm sorry. I hate it. I hate that I want to like it so bad, and the fact that I'm trying to and I can't bothers me. And so it's like I don't want to lie and be like I really liked it, because I didn't like it like I liked X. I can appreciate the performances. I can appreciate the sets and everything, but like. I almost would rather, like, after reading some of the trivia, I'd rather see a movie, like a documentary about the making of this than the actual movie.
Do you feel though that, I mean, you say this is boring and whatnot, but I feel like it's better paced than some of the other Poe films. I mean, as much as I like Mask of the Red Death, I just feel like, oh, okay.
What I've seen of the Poe stuff, and I think it's just not necessarily Corman, it's just the Poe stories, just the era.
Just not a fan of gothic horror in general.
No, I don't think so.
Kind of slow and sleepy.
Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I want to, and it's just like I had a hard time paying attention, so I go back and start it again and give it another. I started watching it one night, and I found myself nodding off, which is on me, not so much the movie. Is just tried watching it too late and went back, and I'm like not tired, and I'm still like struggling to, I put my phone down and not double task when I'm doing movies for the podcast, and I'm like finding myself fidgeting and checking the time where I didn't not even with the Beast, like, because it was only an hour, but this one for some reason it's just like the era. I think I just don't. It's not my favorite. It's not my jam.
Brian, did you say your piece yet?
Not entirely, I guess. I've just been kind of chiming in on everyone else's. This is probably, I don't know, it might be my least favorite of the Poe movies.
Oh wow!
Just because a lot of the comedy does. I mean, okay, saying it's my least favorite of a bunch of really good things isn't necessarily an insult. I still like this movie. Okay. It's just it doesn't like the comedy isn't that well served. I guess like I would have preferred something a little straightforward. Like I said, of the two movies Boris Karloff was in called The Raven, this is the second best one. I like the one he did with Lugosi better, even though I mean that one's just kind of okay too. But
well, where does it rank in the thousands of movies that are called The Raven?
Number 2 probably.
I thought we would all agree that the Italian movie The Raven is the best one.
Have I seen the Italian The Raven?
I'm trying to remember who directed it. I'm not remembering.
I know there's like 700 black cats, but I don't recall an Italian.
Oh, I'm thinking of The Black Cat. I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay.
The Black Cat.
Anyway.
The one that
there's an actual like Poe movie that John Cusack plays Edgar Allan Poe from 2012, The Raven. I never saw it.
That blows.
I heard it was awful.
Anyway, so yeah, of movies that I would give both nuts and the left half of my dick to have been on the set for.
Oh.
During the wizard battle, with none of the effects laid over, and just watching Vincent Price and Boris Karloff point at each other and make faces.
And ducking and nothing.
Right? That had to have been a glorious day to have been, just to see that. I would
That's
give
what I'm
a lot
saying.
of
a documentary
things.
would be so much. It'd be better than the actual movie.
I remember catching. I might have caught part of this on TV when I was a kid, and because I remember Peter Lorre turning with the bird costume on, and thinking like, "What the fuck is happening?" Like, this isn't how this is supposed to go.
The local stage play Wings, yeah.
Yeah, and then later on seeing the whole movie and going, okay, well, now in context it makes a little more sense, but
it's still goofy.
Yeah, it's just just doing this as a comedy doesn't work for me, I guess. Like all of the other very serious, like I love slow, sleepy gothic horror movies. I'm totally good with that. The atmosphere is just like a cozy blanket fresh out of the dryer for me. Like, but I don't know. Trying to make it funny just doesn't work. And again, that's not to say I don't like this movie. I'd happily sit down and watch it again right now. But I would happily sit down and watch all of the other Poe movies right now first. It's fine.
It's fine.
All right. So, Tad, what trivia do you have for this one?
There was so much good stuff here. Peter Lorre and Jack Nicholson were fond of ad-libbing their lines, much to the annoyance of Boris Karloff, who was working from the script. Apparently, just reading through a lot of the stuff, he was just like livid on set at these two because he had remembered everything and they're like just making shit up. And it's sort of like Rickles on X, where he's just like, he's a consummate professional, and at this age, he's a grumpy old man, and these two knuckleheads are fucking him up. Jack Nicholson always gave high praise to everyone he worked with on the set except for one character, the actual Raven. He said the Raven pooped on everyone, but especially liked to poop on him. He later said, I would look down where the Raven flew off my shoulder and it would be covered in poop. I hated that fucking bird.
I can hear that. I can hear that quote in Nicholson's voice right in my head.
I hated that fucking bird.
So I'm going to interrupt you here for a second. When I remember when I was a kid, my mom would occasionally just bring home something she thought I would like when she was shopping after work, and she knew I liked Fangoria, even though she didn't approve of it. But for some inexplicable reason, she brought home one day a special edition of the magazine that was all like werewolf themed, and there was a big spread on Jack Nicholson in it because the movie Wolf was just coming out in theaters, and so there was all this different stuff about all the different movies Jack Nicholson had been in, and one of them was The Raven. And the blurb on it was just, and The Raven, 2 words, raven shit. And there was a little cartoon of a raven shitting on Jack Nicholson. So that's apparently where that story came from. It's all these years later, that puzzle piece just fell into place.
Here's a good story about, you were talking about this earlier. Vincent Price recalled about the final duel. Boris hated being strung up in the air on those chairs. He was terribly crippled, and when we were both floating in the air on these wires, it wasn't pleasant feeling at all, and I hated having the snake wrapped around my neck for 2 hours. I hate snakes. So apparently everyone just hated the animals, and Boris hated being strung up with wires. When the film was completed ahead of schedule, Roger Corman used the cast and sets to make The Terror. Here's one I alluded to earlier. Vincent Price as the sorcerer Dr. Craven inspired the creation of Doctor Strange, and in fact became creator Steve Ditko's model for the Sorcerer Supreme. Doctor Strange's full name is Stephen Vincent Strange in Price's honor.
Makes all sorts of
Fuck,
sense.
have I not known that all these years?
How,
and
right?
Doctor Strange being my favorite Marvel character.
And now you know why.
Yeah.
The sequence in which Boris Karloff's castle is consumed by fire uses footage also seen in Corman's Poe adaptation, House of Usher. So they just reuse the same footage. Go figure. I mean, the trivia on here, like I said, I just want to watch a documentary. Boris Karloff was extremely annoyed by having to wear a heavy cape. You could just say Boris Karloff was annoyed by everything in this movie, apparently. That's all the basic ones I thought were really... cinematographer Floyd Crosby was the father of David Crosby, which is pretty sweet.
Oh.
He won an Academy Award for his cinematography in F.W. Maranu Tabu, The Story of South Seas in 1931. So he won an Academy Award before he worked on a Corman film. Yeah.
Cool.
The mighty fall.
Just kidding. So there we go.
All right, thanks, Tad. Now, we're going to take a quick break, everybody. But when we come back, we have 2 more segments, so stay tuned. First, though, you're going to hear a promo for our podcast network called the Prescribed Films Podcast Network. The PFPN is home to so many amazing shows, such as Brett and Tony with Ash and Abe. Brett and Tony with Ash and Abe is a podcast where 4 friends, Brett, Tony, Ash, and Abe, come together to discuss a set topic and go randomly off topic in ways they never imagined. Every other week, though, they also discuss a random B movie that they find on Shudder. So their motto is also one that I live by. B movies are the best movies. So you can check out Brett and Tony with Ash and Abe and all the other shows at thepfpn.com. We'll be right back.
You're listening to the Prescribed Films Podcast Network, home to hundreds of hours of free podcast entertainment. The shows on this network all have a common goal, providing you with the best discussions about movies and other forms of entertainment media. The PFPN hopes to fill your earholes with audio joy. Visit our website with links to all the other amazing shows at www.thepfpn.com. Thanks for listening.
Welcome back to the show, and now it's time to hear from you guys, the listeners. Here's Jason with Shoutouts.
It's time for Shoutouts! 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 Shoutouts!
Before we get into that, I have to ask you, Tad, since you were hanging out over there at Camp Screams from the Basement, and you said there were a lot of good shows coming up over there. Did you happen to discuss with Sam and Casey why Insane Mike hasn't been on their show yet?
Yeah, what
Did
the
that
fuck?
come up at all?
It did, because I was like, him or Brian would probably be better on this episode. I'm always like, I'm not worthy of a Fulci episode, because they could probably out-history me tenfold. and they might possibly be able to explain what the fuck's happening in any of these movies, or at least fake it until they make it. But no, I mean they got to get them on everybody over there, and
That's right. All right, we asked, what are your favorite movies directed by Roger Corman?
And you didn't follow directions, you assholes.
Yeah, right off the bat, Jacob, you did not listen. Jacob McLaughlin says, as a director, maybe I'll just read the other half next episode. Spoiler. He says, House of Usher, The Pit and the Pendulum, The Tomb of Ligeia, The Raven.
Ligeia.
That's what I said. A Bucket of Blood. The Little Shop of Horrors. And as a producer, Death Race 2000, Targets, Piranha, Galaxy of Terror, Chopping Mall, Deathstalker 2, Battle Beyond the Stars, Suburbia, Rock and Roll High School, and Fantastic Four. Well, that's... And it sounds like a lot, but out of 500 movies, that's just a little. That's all right.
That's nothing.
So thanks, Jacob. Up next, we got Lisa, Cavalier Attacker Lisa. She says, Little Shop of Horrors. Woo. And Last Woman on Earth has had its moments. I haven't seen that one. Is it good?
Honestly, I haven't seen that
as
one
good
yet
as
either.
The Last Man? Or even better.
That's a tough one to beat.
That's true. We got Attacker Emily Randolph. She says, directed is Pit and the Pendulum, but produced would be Sharktopus. Emily, what? Of course she liked that. All right, up next we got Attacker Tim Lennerer says, Bucket of Blood and War of the Satellites for giving Dick Miller the lead. Hell yeah. He turns in two completely different performances, too. He's an incel bus boy who turns evil after a taste of popularity in the former, and a space pilot yelling at the United Nations in the latter. The Pit and the Pendulum for showing what happens when you gaslight Vincent Price into murder mode. Pro tip, don't do that. And he says 1963 was possibly his best year with The Raven, The Terror, The Haunted Palace, and X, the man with the X-ray eyes. Sure, The Terror is incoherent at best, but it's never boring. And that year also had the intersection of Corman's has-been acting picking up a paycheck and future superstar collaborators. And, of course, Dick Miller as the guy who gets a verbal slapdown in a carnival from Ray Milland in X. Yeah. Anytime there's a verbal slapdown, Brian is for it. Up next, we got Sam Lynn. Speaking of the guy who won't put Mike on his show, he says, House of Usher is my favorite of his directorial stuff. It was my first Corman, so there's a lot of nostalgia attached, but I genuinely believe that it's his best Poe adaptation. But I have to shout out him producing Chopping Mall, which to this day is the single greatest achievement in cinema history. He's not wrong there, is he, Mike?
No, Chopping Mall's great. I love it.
Oh, and Rock and Roll High School. That's a banger. What a legend. Up next, we got Calvin Goodlickson. He says, Little Shop of Horrors, Bucket of Blood, and The Terror. Guess who's next? The Reapster! He says, just going as director here. Yeah, because that's the way the directions read. The Reapster says, attack. Yeah, what are we going to do next episode when they see that the question's close, but it's not, and they'd already fucking answered them all? Anyway, they'll just do it again because they're awesome.
They still have plenty more films to choose from.
You're right. So Reapster says, just going as a director here, Attack of the Crab Monsters, The Terror, and all of his Edgar Allan Poe, Vincent Price movies, especially Fall of the House of Usher and The Raven. Thank you, Mr. Corman. And lastly, we got Giancarlo Nurko. I think it's his first time commenting. Thank you, sir. Or ma'am, whatever you are from wherever you're from. I don't know. I regret starting that sentence. Here we go.
He made sure you alienate every possible option.
Well, if I get one, I got to get them all. No half-assing around here. But that person said, Fall of the House of Usher, Mask of the Red Death, and Pit and the Pendulum. Please don't be mad at me. I'm just an idiot. So hey,
He's
that's
got us canceled.
I know. Well, yeah, I'm surprised we've lasted this long, to be honest. But
That's a good run.
That's all we had. We had a couple voicemails. Let's get this over to them and off of me.
Hey, everybody, Attacker Brian here for my bi-weekly phone call. And it sounds like this episode we are discussing the movies of the late, great Roger Corman. And I'm one of the luckiest people alive because last year in Las Vegas, I got to hang out with a bunch of the Mutants fam. Joe Bob, Darcy, John, Yuki, Roger Corman, his wife, and Bruce Dern, and watch what will always be my favorite Roger Corman movie, Bucket of Blood. Because I got to spend the night in Vegas at the drive-in, under the stars, drinking slushies, eating popcorn, being more diabetic than I am now, surrounded by people I love, and my heart was just, and mind, body and soul, all of that mushy stuff was just at rest. Just watching a movie, surrounded by a group of amazing people, and I will have that memory to cherish for the rest of my life. Hope you guys have good memories of Roger, like I do, and I hope you have a good week. Go out, spend some time with your family, and watch a Roger Corman film. Take care. Bye-bye.
Oh, Godzilla. The first serious moment on this podcast. That was great. Up next, we got one more voicemail from the Hot Rod.
Tacker Rod here, again. So it took the death of a horror legend to stop these damn color episodes. Roger Corman, if you can hear me, thank you for your sacrifice to humanity and my sanity. All kidding aside, Roger Corman was involved with so many films, but I've only really seen 2 of his directed films. It's kind of a blind spot for me. So I've seen The Beast with a Million Eyes and A Bucket of Blood. Bucket of Blood being my favorite. Most of the movies that I've seen of his are his producer credited films. PSA, remember, when you die, you can't take all your collectibles with you unless you're smart like me and bought 2 plots side by side with a pane of glass between them. Until next time.
Yes. That's a good plan. Writing that shit down.
Oh, yeah.
You and I are going to need more than
I know. Yes, much. We're going to need our own mausoleums of some sort.
Melt them all down to make your coffin.
That's...
can you make coffins out of cheap vinyl?
Well,
we're going to try.
Make a coffin that transforms.
Ooh, yes.
That's a robot chicken gag, you hack.
Well, anyway, you too can get your voicemails on the show. Hear your pretty voices. Just give us a call at 415-952-6857. That's 415-95-AOTKP. Leave us that voicemail. Get on the show, and that is shout-outs.
And now the monster from the ocean floor himself, the author of the best-selling memoir, How I Made New Movies in Hollywood and Never Saw a Dime. It's Insane Mike Saunders with Insane's Picks.
One of my goals with Insane's Picks is to educate and bring into the spotlight lesser-known films and forgotten filmmakers. Michael J. Murphy was a highly prolific British indie filmmaker that so few people know about, mostly because despite making films for almost 50 years, very, very, very few of his films ever got distribution. One of his films that got distribution all the way into the United States was a film called Invitation to Hell. Michael J. Murphy got ripped off in the distribution deal of Invitation to Hell, so out of pure frustration, spite, and anger, he made the movie we're going to talk about right here and now for Insane's Picks, Bloodstream from 1985. Bloodstream is a shot-on Super 8 horror film about a filmmaker who gets ripped off by a distributor, and for revenge, he kills the guy and his entire family and films it. The movie starts off with a couple driving down the road when the man suddenly pulls over and starts screaming in pain about being too hot. So the woman leaves to go find help for the man, but the man ends up running off into the woods, ripping his clothes off, and eventually starts ripping his own skin, his muscles, rips open his own guts. And by the time she comes back to him, he's nothing but a papier-mâché skeleton. Then it cuts to a small group of people sitting around a TV in an office watching all of this as it transpires. Turns out it's the latest movie by this low-budget horror filmmaker called Bloodstream. He is presenting the film to this Frank Zappa-looking motherfucker in hopes that he'll release the film. But the distributor is a real a-hole and says it's crap, and he will not release it, and no one would ever release it, and he should quit making movies. Upset at this outcome, the director goes home and spends 70% of this movie's running time watching all of his older films. This could come off as annoying or boring to most viewers, but for me, it was my favorite part of this movie because we get to see the films he's watching in great lengths, as they are just as no budget as this movie itself. And also probably even cheaper. We get to see a zombie movie, a vampire picture, a slasher, even a mummy movie throughout the 1 hour and 20-minute running time. Come to find out, the distributor is a really nasty jerk who is a scumbag and ends up releasing the film anyway and keeping all the profits to himself. Our disgruntled director decides to make a snuff movie by killing the distributor's entire family, in between, of course, watching his own films. A low to no budget production value, bad audio, backyard effects, all with a ton of heart, charm, and creativity. If you dig do-it-yourself, no-budget filmmaking, then I suggest you travel overseas for some British horror of Michael J. Murphy and check out Bloodstream. Now, warning, his stuff is hard to find since he never really released many of his movies, but I found Bloodstream and some of his other stuff on YouTube. However, there was, just as of 2022, actually, there was a 10-disc Blu-ray set called Magic, Myth, and Mutilation, the micro-budget cinema of Michael J. Murphy. I must have it. It was released by Powerhouse Films. It goes for like $120. Yeah. But hey, man, come on. Like 10 discs. Spanning his career from 1967 to 2015. So, my birthday's coming up. Oh. Anyway, that's it for this Insane's Picks. Definitely check out Bloodstream. And that is it for this episode of Attack of the Killer Podcast. I want to...
Insane Mike didn't lose a dime in Hollywood. Successful.
That's right.
I said never saw a dime. I never lost a dime.
Well, it's the same thing, really.
True. If you can't see it, you never lost
That's
it.
That's right.
Actually, I was in Hollywood once, and there was a hole in my pocket, and I lost a dime.
No. It's so close.
Yeah. Jesus Christ. That was a time I was going through some changes.
Ah, jeez.
So
End this now.
So thanks everybody for listening. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed presenting it to you. Check us all on all of the stuff. YouTube, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Tons of cool stuff on there. We got the TikToks, Instagram, X, Threads, Facebook. We're everywhere. And if that's still not enough for you, don't forget, you can become an attacker. Go to jointheattackers.com. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you guys next time on Attack of the Killer Podcast.
Oh no, could this be the end of? Attack of the Killer Podcast. Attack